All right, this is getting out of hand. Welcome to another episode of Raw Podcast. I am your host, Yenovah Tylervite, proudly presenting himself as me, your host, such and such. And in today's episode, we're talking about the things that I'm just deeming out of control. I need to let out this bit of a rant. And it's in relation to manifestation, if that interests you. If it doesn't interest you, then, click away, whatever, do your own thing. But if manifestation is of interest to you and you are curious about who thinks what do I think about other people thinking about this and that, then this is what this video is about. Now, I may as well just talk a little bit about maybe specific people. Normally I just don't want to bring up certain people because I don't really want to bring attention to people. But I have listened to one of Subconscious Loz's most recent lives, and she recommended a channel who I have seen from a distance but never watched or examined. I was curious but never really sure. And she recommended the guy. Can't really remember his name, but his channel's name is The Power of I Am, which is, got to hand him credit, not a bad name for a channel. So he's kind of claimed that specific channel name, title, but it can definitely feel, kind of cringe when everyone else is trying to take the same kind of spotlight. Kind of like how the Backrooms movie, not the movie itself, but people try to live up to the Kane Pixels, kind of like that attitude a little bit to me. But anyway, I found this guy. The reason I kind of am interested in the guy is apparently she said in the live that he knows his stuff about the Bible, and I appreciate that, and that's what makes me so curious about this guy. He apparently knows his stuff about the Bible much better than her, which I just thought was really interesting because I am also intermediate. I'm well versed in the Bible in an intermediate sense myself. I don't know all scriptures by heart, but as a Christian, former Jehovah's Witness, I do know a thing or two about the Bible. Not inherently by heart, but I know a thing or two. Intermediate level, you could say. I have read a fair bit, but it's not about reading it from cover to cover. It's about knowing it by heart. That's what makes the Bible such a fascinating book. The library of books, as Neville Goddard said it. But why I wanted to make this particular episode is because when I looked at this guy's stand store, a stand store being an alternative to a funnel being an alternative to a website, aka a stand store is literally just an upfront website where you can click and pay for a one-on-one connection with the host. I noticed this dude, The Power of I Am, the channel, I think his name's Eric P or something, I can't remember. He charges $240, just around that, maybe a little bit less, $240 US for a 15-minute phone call with him. Now, kudos and bless that man. If he's actually successful in that, then kudos, all the blessings to you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But from a background of struggle, maybe everyone struggles, I don't know. But from a background of someone like me who has struggled in the past, I don't really identify with that anymore. It's just kind of interesting how it's like to get across the threshold of poverty, you kind of have to literally sit on the rafter, and the rafter or the raft literally is like this luxurious raft, $240, right? It could just be the way I'm seeing it, but it's kind of like the high end, I mean, I do know there are some people who charge thousands, which is insane, thousands for a single phone call, aka someone like William Brown, whose YouTube channel got deleted, by the way, after literally uploading his one video that he talked about manifestation for the first time. But me, I learned a lot from William Brown, actually. But I charge $240 per hour, right? And I think that's an extremely fair, it's a high price, but it's an extremely fair price, because you've got to look at yourself like, for the right person, the value is just right. And this is kind of like a bit of a money rant that I'm going on about, a bit of a tangent about the money. It's like the $240. It's just it's the right price. I did a lot of research, to the extent that I could, to determine that this was the best price that I could offer and that people would reasonably be willing to pay. And I've seen a lot of other coaches in the industry charge similar, maybe lower, maybe higher. If they want more, clients, they charge less. But the quality of the client becomes less as well. Whereas if you charge more cash, the quality of the client becomes much higher, supposedly. Now, when I want to cross the road for a minute, so you're gonna have to bear with me. When I was thinking about something about I'm crossing the road. $240. What's kind of cheesing me off? It's just like I kind of have grown up in my teenage years listening to different coaches throughout my years. And these people kind of are inaccessible. How, unless you're targeting the rich, I just don't know, man. Like, I kind of feel a little hurt, a little betrayed to my teenage self when I see these people. I don't know, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Maybe it's the teenager in me that it's just a little hurt, seeing that they charge such high prices, because teenage me wouldn't be able to afford it. Maybe grown-ass me, sure, not a big deal. But I'm also much more selective about who I'm choosing to hire. And so it's just like $240 for 15 minutes. Kudos to the guy, but I just think it's a little bit outlandish. And I'm not judging, but it's just like, damn. Now, if you want to get in contact with me, right, one-to-one, $240, it's 350 Aussie dollars roughly. But your first call with me is for free, right? Oh, another thing about that's really kind of cheesing me off about this whole 15-minute thing. Like, he charges like triple the more you go into the minutes, right? And from a value perspective, it's not really about the minutes. But for me, I'm looking at the minutes. An hour is kind of a necessary time frame to be in contact with a client, especially when developing a skill. If you're looking for practical guidance and instruction, want advice, you want literally just a single question answered, maybe 15 minutes is the thing. Maybe that's all it needs. But that's not exactly my approach. I can do that. I can give advice and tips, right? I can't make those decisions for you. But in my IRL job, where I actually teach people skills, the minimum amount of time we need to spend together is about an hour, right? Sometimes 2 hours, but that's like the maximum amount of time that you need to spend together to learn a skill. And then you repeat the skill within the span of another 7 days. sometimes a fortnight. Until you are able to replicate the skill and you keep practicing the skill on your own, and then I do assessments on the skill. So in relation to this dude that I'm talking about, the power of AM, his channel or whatever, it's just like, I can't say what he shares, what he tells, what he gives, what he teaches, and even if he's teaching something, is he actually transferring a skill? So I can't comment on that. But I know for myself, I aim to transfer a skill over the internet, over the phone call. I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to do that just yet. I'm still kind of tinkering with the works and exactly knowing what particular skills we need to do. It's just still tinkering in the works. But I do know after several phone calls with people, it's going to take more than a single hour. It could potentially take 10 to 15, to be honest, which is what I normally experience with my IRL skill-based job, where I teach people skills. It takes at least 10 hours, which is like at least once a week for 3 months. And then they are able to kind of master the skill. They're on their merry way. They're literally, they get qualifications and shit. They're mutually recognized nationwide. They get the licenses and stuff because that's what I train them for. And in terms of manifestation, the one who wants their qualifications the most tends to do the worst. Whereas the ones who are much more chill, calm, a bit more nonchalant, the qualifications just come naturally, inevitably. What's kind of cheesing me off as well is that there's this other lesbian dating and self-improvement coach on YouTube who, not gonna lie, the advice seems a little bit generic, because every time I have watched her, it's not really much different than Bobby Roode. I can't remember the lesbian's name, to be honest. But there's this guy called Bobby Roode, and his advice, although psychologically impressive, can definitely backfire on you and is a little bit on the generic side at the same time. Just a little bit, not downplaying the guy, but it's just like, let's say you're in a divorce or something, that shit that he teaches ain't going down. Sorry about that, my phone cut out and now we're back. And so, yeah, that lesbian chick that I was on about, mid, but no judgment, is that for the first time in forever, for the first effing time in for literally ever, she's reading Neville Goddard books, particularly Feeling is the Secret. And I'm just like, this is getting out of hand now, because even the so-called dating and self-improvement coaches, even aka a lesbian dating coach, who seems to be targeting a male audience of all things, is now reaching for metaphysical truths. And who is she learning these metaphysical truths from? No other than the OG himself, Neville Goddard, who I also look to. But you know what? Now, I don't really know her true story to be H, but in my own mind, I've been looking for the answers for a long time. I've been digging. I've been trying to sift through what's real, what's not, what's fake, what's true, what's false. And when I try and dig for answers and I ask questions, sometimes these old coaches, even my own one, were just assholes. And even looking back at some of the material that I was learning so die-heartedly for is making me question how valid was some of the material. Some of it raises a couple of eyebrows. And it makes me wonder, maybe I was right to raise my eyebrows. But now we have this lesbian dating coach reading and quoting from Neville Goddard. I mean, I have no idea what her audience perspective is like, but it just does kind of annoy me a little bit, because the truth is, other than a couple of differences, of course, is that we're just typically normal people. These people who are reading Neville Goddard's book are just normal people. The people that you look up to, the people that you think are smarter than you, are just normal ass people. You might even look at me one day. I think it'd be kind of cool and an honor where you look at me and you think of me as kind of like this awesome person. But you've got to realize I'm just a normal person. And that's what I try to remind myself of being, because when I, in the past, have tried to be like these cool guys and literally try to implement in my way, what I understand, I try to implement the knowledge, I just come across as a bit of a unhinged maniac that gets rejected. And it's not even about me, it's about realizing that these people are just normal people. And I want you, if you're listening to this, to go to the source material yourself and cross-reference it yourself with other supporting and or contradictory or material, basically, and determine the truth for yourself. Because I have a bit of a hunch that these people on YouTube, coaches, etc., are kind of profiting off people's misery. And I understand that people, when they're sick, they go to doctors. And that's fair. That's fair enough. That's fine. But, you know, I have a feeling that they want you to be on the system. And if you can't succeed while being on the system, then you don't really exist to them. You have to pay hundreds of dollars just to talk to them. And I get that, obviously, you don't get something for nothing in a sense. But just something's off. And it kind of just gets under my skin. And that's why I'm kind of doing this little rant thing, to let out a little bit of steam. And sure, maybe my steam is not perfectly organized at this time. That's why I'm calling it Raw Podcast, because it's raw, it's fresh. It's literally just kind of like this verbal diarrhea. And hey, if you like my verbal diarrhea, great. I suppose at least I try to point out something, make it relevant. And my message is clear. My message is more fruitful than any of these people. All these people, they're quoting from the book. They're like, they read out a sentence, and then they kind of, maybe, if you're lucky enough, they paraphrase it in their own way, which I think people normally do. But you do not get the same sense of absorption had you read the damn thing yourself. And none of these people tell you that you should be reading the damn material yourself, which is what I highly recommend you do. Question these coaches, including myself, if you really want to. Ask where the source material comes from. Test the validity of it. And it makes me think, in my own program that I was a part of for a couple of years, still a member of it, but I don't participate because the coaches have the massivest egos, especially the lead coach behind the scenes, massivest egos. There's a Reddit review exposing the group now, But it's like this. I did read all the material. I literally copy pasted all the material that he had written, essentially. I basically had to write this. It's not necessarily a proud thing to rewrite a 300-page article, kind of almost plagiarizing the dude. But you had no choice, because he literally told you that you had to create a mind map to understand the thing he said. Okay, fair enough. You can possess the skill of creating a mind map. Fair enough. Not a bad skill. I don't necessarily regret that. But upon absorbing the readings, this is the problem, is that he would shit on other source material. He would not refer to where he gained the knowledge from, right? If you're being exposed to belief, ideas, things that you're not necessarily familiar with, you want evidence to back up that these things are true. Now, this guy, including in his program, consistently tried to throw reviews in your face to show, my stuff works, here are the reviews. And this makes me have like a bad taste for reviews, because the reviews, A, don't guarantee similar outcomes. Insurance companies effing say this, that they can't guarantee similar results. It all depends on various different factors. Disclaimer alert. So anyway, it was almost forbidden to try to cross-reference his knowledge. There was even a contract that you were supposed to sign before entering into the program, basically saying you were not allowed to share any of the knowledge, in a sense. Kind of typical shit, but it was a tiny bit unhinged. Tiny bit. And I remember asking that question, can you provide the source material for the subject of ammonial granulation, so that we as students can cross-reference this? And he was saying, I'm an academic. And he was shouting so loud that the mic that he was wearing went mute. That's how loud he was shouting. And then I actually kind of cried a little bit. And he said, you're gaslighting me, in front of all these other students. I actually have the footage on camera. I've got it on my phone, which I won't be sharing because I don't think the guy deserves the attention. He doesn't, in my mind. Sure, he's helped some people, but not everyone. I'm not saying this because I'm like being a victim. I'm just saying that this guy has a massive ego. And he basically possessed the victim mindset that he preached against, which was so ironic. And for me, it kind of led me down the path of having to reevaluate everything and look at everything and go to the source material and see, what is this true? Where does this come from? Right? And there was this one person who many people seem to credit their success to, which I was very interested in, Neville Goddard. And they're like, well, if you don't need the coaches, just read the books, The Power of Awareness. And so I did. That's exactly what I did. I read every single Neville Goddard book at least 3 times each, and I've listened to all of his lectures, some twice, several twice. And even right now as we speak, although I'm on my walk, I've been reflecting on the one book that I've read like at least 10 times now, Prayer, the Art of Believing. And I'm actually got a texter, marker, and a pen, and I'm highlighting and trying to cross-reference different passages because I'm asking questions. And that's what I want you to do. Oh yeah, and who does Neville Goddard get his information from? As far as I can tell so far, it's mainly just the Bible and his experience. Whereas today I learned that even Carl Jung has apparently been in contact with demons, which have apparently influenced his psychiatric works, which is actually a major concern, because I think a lot of people look up to Carl Jung as being a renowned leader in his field of psychiatric work. But little does many of us know, some of his work may not necessarily be healthy. It could just be adding more gravel to the sand pile, which is just crazy. And so it's interesting to see where these people get the source material from. You track it, you go to the root. You go to the root, you go to the root. And that's what I'm telling you to do. Go to the root, go to the root. No one ever tells you this. And this is what cheeses me off so much. That lesbian chick who's now starting to read from Neville Goddard's books out of nowhere now. Is she going to tell you to go to the root? She might say it in some video here or there. You know, it's just a passive thing that is in one ear and out the other. But I'm telling you that this is the thing that you need to do when you're actually absorbing this information. And another thing about this information is it's just too damn addicting. You know, when you've struggled for so long to talk to a member of the opposite sex, or you've tried to be in a relationship, or you've had major anger issues, or shit's gone down in your life, you're trying to listen to people thinking that you're building yourself up, but YouTube is the problem. Too many different opinions, too many synthesized, mixed ideas, just convoluting your mind. And this is why I say you've got to be wary of spiritual awakening, because it's like you've got Hinduism in there, you've got so-called channel entities in the mix, which are corrupting the real message, the real skill. It reminded me of when I used to train for firearms. There was a course that you could do in Australia where you could train for firearms in certain parts of the country. And I remember how we were taught how not to use a gun. But when it actually came to the firing range, well, I didn't know how to use a gun. The only thing we knew was how to not use the gun. You couldn't assemble it, you couldn't fire it, you couldn't do nothing with it. And that made assembling and using the rifle much more dangerous, because they told you how not to use it and not included how to use it. Now that's quite simple, but you see how government interference and regulation actually made the process of learning how to use a gun much more, in my opinion, more dangerous than it needed to be. And I'm a teacher. I'm an instructor. And another thing about even the mechanic industry is that most of the apprentice mechanics, some of them aren't really having great lives, to be honest. Some of them are all right. But in my experience, it cheeses me off that the teachers never helped anyone. They never spared you. They never held your hand. And maybe that's just the way of the man, or the way of life. I'm telling you, it's not the most effective way. Being self-taught, you can definitely get ahead. I learned that being self-taught. I saw people who were being self-taught, teaching themselves skills, and they were exceeding in the field. But the teachers, when you needed the help, they just weren't really there. They really didn't like it. You were in a cold room, reading a book half the day, answering questions on a computer. Yeah, that's being in possession of the knowledge. That's fine. That's fine and dandy. You needed to literally sit down sometimes and study your ass off. A bit intense, sitting down for hours and not really doing much. But no help with the actual assessments. They'd have these old machinery parts just lying around on workbenches. And you kind of, you barely just know what you're looking at. You barely know what to do. I remember this one time I was told to look for a specific pen and figure out what the problem was, but I didn't know. I was never taught, never shown. And one student hinted to me that you needed to feel it, feel the pen, feel it wiggle, and that was the problem. A wiggling pen. A wiggling pen is a bad sign because it means that the part is worn out, and I had no idea. And I think I eventually kind of cried about that, and the teacher took me out. And it wasn't my proudest moment, but it's just like the teacher just couldn't be damned to help. And I hated, honestly, being a mechanic because of the teachers. It wasn't really even the workplace. The workplace itself was kind of hard, but it was the teachers. They just, in my mind, didn't give a damn. Some people were like, oh yeah, when you get to know him after a couple of years, he's all right. But it's just like, do I really want to spend a couple of years having to deal with this guy to just get on his good side? I don't know. And I suppose, yeah, just getting back to being a normal person, realize that these teachers, some of them are massive assholes with massive egos. The one I recently did a podcast about tells you straight away what kind of a person he is. He reminded me a lot of my coach. And when he reminded me of my coach, I'm looking back at my own coach and I'm like, damn, there are some things about my own coach that I didn't realize was actually really wrong. Because he talked to me in a very similar manner once. How did I overlook those things? How did I overlook being so mistreated by my own coach? So that's interesting to think about. But anyone who is they're just normal people. When they're reading a passage from a book, they're not anyone special. They're just normal people. They're just normal people. And you can read the exact same source material and become an expert yourself, essentially. That's how I became, I'm actually a professional on the subject of Neville Goddard now, because I've read all of his books and such. Right? And this is the problem. Most people in the audience, most people who are into manifestation have never read Neville. Maybe one or two books, but they've never read him themselves. And even if they had read him, from what lens are they looking at him from? Orthodox, atheist, fixed mindset, open mindset? Are they aware from in which where they are looking from? That is a very important aspect in manifestation. All about the where. I think I'm going to wrap this up now because I don't think there's really much more to add here. Other than to continue to say, basically, do your own research, and not in a dismissive manner. That is almost kind of the key to being independent in your own self-trust and self-knowledge. You can cross-reference. You can almost become an expert in your own field. I think even Brian Tracy says this, if you just, study for 10,000 hours almost. Mr. Beast is like 100,000 hours. And that's how you self-taught. You can self-teach yourself. This is Yenovah Tylervite signing out.